Serious, parents of Reddit, what was a legit reason why you didn't let your son/daughter have that friend over go to a sleepover? He was a complete asshole with no respect for adults. Breaking point was when he put bleach in a spray bottle and chased our 5-year-old around spraying him. His mother apologized hard never again. My parents went to drop off my stuff at a friend's house because I wanted to spend the night. They walked in. And my dad said nope, you're coming home. She had 2 brothers. One was super nice. One was very touchy. Her dad then threatened my dad and said he can't take a child out of his home without his permission. My dad being 6'3" and a large dude got in his face. Her dad looked like a string bean and said he was taking me home right now. My dad told me later he had a really bad gut feeling something bad would have happened if I stayed. Her touchy brother is in jail now. For what I'm not even sure. The kid that wanted to come over has been over once before and he shattered a window when he got mad then ran to his house 3 blocks away. He is destructive and has some unmedicated issues that affect his interaction with other kids. The kid doesn't play. He just upturns bins. Throws things around and breaks stuff. My son is growing out of this kid. The kid is very sheltered and doesn't have the behavioral therapy that the doctors recommend, so he is just too much for my oldest and now my second to deal with. So that means the requests for him to come over are drying up. They really have nothing in common anymore. I had to hide ours box anytime he came over after he broke multiple games and couldn't understand why the shattered CD wouldn't work and why we were mad. I hated not letting the child sleep over. But that would have meant that my child would have wanted to sleep over at his house. His mother was living with a very abusive man who raised every single hair on my neck. This man taped off areas where my son's friend could walk and sit. Rationed food. etc. I was not about to let my son be in that environment. The friend started acting out from abuse. I had already talked to the school counselor about my suspicions and CPS was involved. It was hard to explain to a child of 8 why this friend couldn't come over. I no longer allowed my son's best friend to come to our place or for him to go over to his after the best friend's mom reported us to the police as harboring a runaway. This was after the best friend had been tossed out of his mom's house and told to spend the night sleeping outside, and she'd refused our phone calls to find out what was going on. So yes. I wasn't going to let a 16-year-old spend the night in 30-degree weather with nowhere to go. Sue me. The cops showed up. Said she'd reported us as harboring a runaway. We explained what was happening and got treated like dirt and told that from now on we had to have full permission from the mom. Fine. We urged my son's friend to go to the police. Report to them what was happening. And left it at that. The mom tried to apologize 3 days later as being off her meds and say it was okay for my son to go to their house and vice versa, and I politely refused and hung up while she was screaming at me. I'd always been kind of uncomfortable with the woman and that just sealed it. They were still friends at school. But there were no more hanging out at either one's house and I explained why and they both agreed to the rules. The son is in the military now and doing quite well and no longer has contact with his mother. Gee. I wonder why. I know the band kid. He would break sheet. Hide from you. Hit the dogs. And he'd be rude and physically abusive to my grandmother. He'd pinch her for literally no reason and probably little kid punched her a few times. He would scream for no reason and no matter what you did for punishment he'd ignore it. My mom physically threw him and all his toys out of our house one day after he hit a couple dogs and pinched my grandmother in quick succession. And he just stood outside and fake cried telling us to let him back in. We live in the middle of nowhere with no neighbors or traffic. He wasn't in any danger, and if he actually thought about it he could have found his way back in. I think like an hour of peace went by and she finally let him back in. Stories from school include walking out of class and into another and then beating a kid up. Pulling a girl down by her ponytail and wailing on her. Attempting to stab a kid with scissors. And being such a handful the teacher tried to get him moved to special needs school. He was 5 when all of that was going on. He's 6 now and medicated with therapy and doing insanely better. His mom is moving cross country with him to be with her family so they can help look after him. He was banned from a lot of school events and didn't have many friends. But that's turning around now. Came over to our house and ripped my daughter's brand new Joyo poster that she was so proud of to shreds. Mother did nothing. To make it worse, my daughter tried to tape it back together. My heart was breaking. Early 90s. The kids on the street decided to have a camp out in someone's front yard. Little fire. Ghost stories. S'mores. Tents. The whole bit. Middle of the night, one of the kids starts screaming that someone is on him. Turns out another kid that just moved in had stripped down naked and smeared sheet all over himself and attempted to do something to a sleeping kid. Parents all came out after hearing the screaming. Poop kid took a dump in the street and threw some at the parents of yet another kid. Again. It was the early 90s in the Midwest, so this display didn't go well. The parents went crazy. I never saw the poop king again and his family moved away. The violence. THS kid just was violent to the bone. A kid tries to do anything with this kid and a moment later they are either in a headlock or crying on the floor with bruises under their shirt. I found out a few months ago he got put into juvie. Don't think he's far from a prison sentence after he steps out. The father of one of my daughter's classmates, she was only in 2nd grade, kept repeatedly telling my daughter to come spend the night over there. She told me about it, so I made sure to catch him one day and he said in a very strange way, "Oh, she's welcome to spend the night anytime," and he won't look at me. Plus the way he looked at her just creeped me out. Mind you, he's a single father, so there's no other adult in the house to monitor him. My son started public school after going to Montessori school in 4th grade. I met another mom whose son started from private school the same year. My son was weird about befriending her son and I wasn't sure why. Shortly into the friendship, the single mom started asking if her kid could sleep over every Friday. I was fine with that. Then it became school nights. Not so fond of that. Her son started showing up at 6:30 AM before school when we were all still sleeping. My son made other friends and just tolerated friendship with her kid. We explained that his home life wasn't great and he didn't have anyone most of the time. Halfway through the following school year, the kid brought a knife to school and pulled it on my son. The school did nothing. Baltimore. So I contacted her to let her know what happened. Her response was that he was such a goof. My son was rightfully avoiding him at this point, and the mom had the audacity to contact me and ask if we could watch her son for half a school week because she really wanted to go on spring break out of state with friends. She is in her late 30s getting a PhD in psychology. I had to tell her she and her kid were never going to be invited again. My friend and her sister could sleep at our house, but my sister and I couldn't sleep at theirs. In college I figured it out. Their house was a fire trap. Pathways between stuff like a hoarder's house. The bathtub was full of dirty water constantly. You had to move stuff just to use the toilet. The stairs to the basement, where we would have slept, covered in clothes and only one way out of the basement. The windows were too small to crawl out of if you were larger than an average 2-year-old. Saw the inside of the house years later and it was like a different house. They had a piano in the living room that I'd never seen before because it was just covered in hoarder crap. Kid has severe behavior issues and is super violent and destructive. The one and only time he came to our house, he threw all of my daughter's underwear around the room to embarrass her. The worst incident happened at school though, when he tried to choke her out. They were 5 years old at the time. I feel bad for the kid and all, and I know his mom is doing everything she can to help him, but I just can't allow that kind of behavior around my kids and in my home. Pretty sure her dad was abusive and she picked up on that hostility. I didn't let my daughter go over and she doesn't come over here because, despite me feeling bad for the girl, she spent her time in school with my kid telling her to not listen to the teachers and to be disruptive. 9-year-olds, if that helps to understand. My daughter's best friend comes from a home where the parents are kind of mess. Trying to explain to her why her friend can't stay at our house. But she can't stay at their house without flat out saying her parents are constantly dealing with the police over domestic violence. Plus you'd come home smelling like an ashtray. and get the equivalent health benefits of smoking a few packs of cigarettes is a real challenge. When I was in middle school, my friend was a bit goth and tough looking. I was a good kid and my parents knew it. My mom didn't want me hanging out with my friend because she thought she would be a bad influence on me. I told my mom that wouldn't happen and that I would be a good influence on her. My mom said okay. My friend was not bad in any way. She just liked goth clothes. Turned out she was a good student and she lived in a mansion and was super nice. We went to Six Flags Fright Feast and she got me over my fear of throwing up on a roller coaster. Leslie, you were a really good friend and your dogs were super cute. I hope you are happy in life. My daughter was 5 at the time. There was this kid, son of a coworker. Coworker was cool. My daughter got along with this kid on the playground. So we decided to do the playdate thing. The kid couldn't handle sharing his toys, so he started biting. Biting is basically the kid equivalent of whipping your big dick out at a Chuck E. Cheese, which, ironically, is much less of a big deal if you do it while you are still a kid. So we were out of there. Coworker apologized profusely and asked if we could have a do-over at our place. Figured. Not an issue because his toys weren't in play. Nah. Then he started biting because he wanted her toys. Stopped my daughter staying at her friend's house when I found out the friend's mum was an alcoholic who was going out every night to the pub and bringing random guys home for sex. Happened every time she slept there and the mum didn't know the guys' names half the time. Completely disrespectful to our home. After multiple times telling them not to, my daughter is 6. She's 12. We live in the same complex. She'd constantly leave trash all outside. On our stairs. Inside our couch. Floor to where the baby can get. Makeup paint all over our carpets. She didn't care. Last and final sleepover. She invited a kid we didn't know to stay with her too. I felt bad because the girl was younger. Until it was 1 AM and they were blasting music. Yelling. And dancing. We live on the 2nd floor. Told them to go to bed. 7:30 AM. Same exact thing. She started coming over first thing in the morning. Staying until late at night. I told her if she was hungry, she had to go home and eat and come back, 2 doors down, as we didn't have enough food to feed everyone. My husband has been out of work, and we're really struggling. She wouldn't. Whatever snacks we had for our 3 kids were gone in a day. Come to find out, she wasn't allowed at home while her mom was at work. Because her 24-year BF was at home. And she's getting bobs, so she didn't need to be home alone with him. So much wrong with that statement. But true. Just last week the mom sent her to another state for a bit. My daughter misses her, but it's been nice not having my place full of kids. She'd bring friends all the time, all day every single day, and eating all the food we don't have. My mom had a solid rule that I use now and will always use. If your friend can't sit here, look me in the eyes and have a conversation with me. I don't like them. Obviously she could tell the difference from being shy vs being shady. Edit. Typed the comment in a hurry and I'm also typing this edit in a hurry. Me saying shy was an acknowledgement to the socially anxious. Something adults should be able to pick out fairly easy. This rule probably more aptly applied to us when we were say 10 or going into teenage years. Maybe saying look me in the face would have been better way to put it, like another user said below. My daughter was the one excluded. So thought I'd add it as almost like a SAR. My kid has alopecia. For those that don't know, it's an autoimmune disease that causes your immune system to treat your hair follicles as a threat. Boom. Hair loss. Hers is stress induced. And she went completely bald, eyelashes and eyebrows too, for almost 2 years. One of her friend's parents wouldn't let her go over there because she said she didn't want my daughter to spread her disease to her kids. She said this to my kid's face. For 1. That son called 4. She had my phone number. Call me. 2. It isn't contagious. My daughter cried for days. Dad is a chain smoker and smokes in the house. We'll have my daughter's friend stay over. But we'll find an excuse to have her take a shower early on, go to the park, swimming, etc. Our daughter can't stay there overnight. And even if she is there for a few hours, she showers and changes clothes as soon as she gets home. My family smoked inside the house when I was a kid. I remember being so self-conscious when I went to school because even though I was only in elementary, the other little kids would say that I smoked. Of course, any adult would know this wasn't true, but it made me self-conscious. I remember how great other people's houses would smell and the odor that would emanate from my clothes when I'd visit. To this day, I am very particular about how I smell. My parents always refused to let me go over to that friend's house. She could come to our house, but I couldn't go over there. I always threw a fit about it in the moment. We grew apart over the years. As an adult, I had to interact with her family through my job in law enforcement. My parents never said why I couldn't go over there. They didn't want my kid mouth to tell everyone at school that Jane's parents were coke users, dealers, and that their live-in uncle was a registered sex offender. I learned the truth as an adult and respect my parents for being gentle and giving white lies regarding the situation. I'm sure my dumbest kid self would have bluntly mentioned it to Jane and it would have hurt her. I'm sure she had it hard enough in that environment anyways. A neighborhood 7 and 9-year-old asked my 5-year-old daughter to climb out a screenless window to go play and pet a cat. She escaped outside and did fine. But obviously I would have strongly preferred they ask permission first. We go for frequent walks and sometimes hear yelling and screaming coming from their house. While waiting for an ice cream truck, they were outside and said their parents fight and yell at it. All while the parents were asking a 7 and 9-year-old to watch their 1-2-year-old brother while wandering the neighborhood. Yay. No. So when I was a kid, before contouring and highlighting and all the crazy makeup kids put on to just go to high school was around, my mom said I couldn't hang out with this girl Amy because she wore black eyeliner and only sleuths wear black eyeliner. I rallied. Told her she can't judge a person based on eyeliner. I mean, that's fucking insane. After 28 years of best friendship, Amy started sending nudes to my pit husband. Mom was right. I should have listened to her back in 1990. I'd like to know why one of my daughter's friends' parents won't let her spend the night. My daughter has slumber parties, beach trips, all sorts of fun with friends gatherings. I never got to experience that as a child, so if my girl asks for a sleepover or whatnot, the default answer is yes. However, if this one friend comes over, she has to be picked up no later than 11 PM. I don't allow drugs in the house or any drinking during these events, underage or otherwise. Hell, the girl starts college next year. Isn't she old enough to go to a sleepover and watch Netflix? Play video games? Daughter has asked her what the problem is, but she says parents have never let her stay over at anyone's house overnight. I love sleepovers and had nothing but positive experiences with them as a kid all through the 90s. My wife, however, did not. She had very bad experiences, and her mistrust of sleepovers only intensified when her nephew was found out to have abused all of his female cousins over the course of who knows how long. So she says our kids will never have sleepovers because she has only ever seen the bad side of them. And I can't really think of a valid argument to counteract that. Nor do I really want to try at this point. That's some seriously bad stuff.